Greetings everyone, I'm DonTheCrown, and today I want to talk to you about Path of Exile's most misunderstood mechanic, shock. I say that this is the most misunderstood because I frequently see players clicking, "Is the enemy shocked?" in Path of Building, or asking why I don't include shock into my estimations of how good or bad Starforge is, and I rarely encounter someone who is actually using shock correctly, so I figured I would take some time to explain how it works as simple as possible. Shock is an elemental ailment associated with lightning that causes the target to take increased damage from all sources. Now, let's talk about a few parts of that sentence. Number 1. An ailment is a detrimental effect commonly referred to as a debuff. Number 2. Shock is classified as a non-damaging ailment since the shock itself does not do any damage. Bleed, poison, and ignite are the only current damaging ailments. There are several nodes that benefit non-damaging ailments and shock specifically, but we'll get into that in a bit. Next, when you see take increased damage, this is a special type of damage modifier in the game that is an additive more multiplier. I'm not going to go into the complete damage calculation right now. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments. But keeping it simple, all modifiers like this, including shock, intimidate, champion's worthy foe, all add together to provide a single more multiplier. So we can simplify shock's explanation too. Shock is a debuff that makes you do more damage to the target. Shock has a base duration of 2 seconds, and the damage increase scales relative to the amount of shocking damage dealt to the enemy's maximum life. I say shocking damage here because normally shock only counts lightning damage. However, there are a few ways to shock with other types of damage. Regardless, only shocking damage will count for shocking. Also, in order to shock, you must either have chance to shock or have crit. Critical strikes have an inherent 100% chance to shock, freeze, and ignite. I think so far, this is all pretty straightforward. Shock makes enemies take increased damage. Gotta hit them with shocking damage to shock them, and have to have a chance to shock or crit to actually shock. The next part is what most people don't understand or completely ignore. The damage increase of shock scales from 50% at 10% of maximum life dealt to 0% at no damage dealt. This means that the amount of shock you're going to apply will vary depending on how hard you hit with a single shocking hit. And that's the part most people ignore. When you check off "Is the enemy shocked?" in Path of Building, it is assuming that you're hitting an enemy for 10% of their maximum life in a single hit, and they are shocked for that full 50% value. While this will happen against certain weak monsters, generally people gauge their single target damage against Uber Elder. And according to the wiki, Shaper and Uber Elder both have 18 million life, which means you have to hit for 1.8 million damage in a single hit to have a full shock value. And that shock effect won't be there for that first hit at all. Now, I won't go into how to set up Path of Building completely, but if you go to the Calcs tab, select your skill, and select Effective DPS, you'll be able to see your average damage. Here, for example, is my Hack of All Trades Berserker with a perfect Starforge. You'll see that I'm hitting on average for 200,000, which is about 11% of the required 1.8 million to full shock Uber Elder. So our shocks would be adding around 6% increased damage taken, slightly rounded up. But wait, there's more. Previously we spoke about the benefits to non-damaging ailments and shocks directly. Looking at the tree, you can see there are a few nodes which provide bonuses to the effect of non-damaging ailments, and there are also nodes that increase the effect of shock. There's also items that increase these effects as well. If we were able to gather 100% increased effect of shock, or non-damaging ailments, that would increase our 6% increased damage taken to 12%. Still far short of that 50% expected by POB. Elementalist has an ascendancy point called Beacon of Ruin. This makes all of your shocks from hits be at least 15%. This means that all damage from shocking hits will at least count for 15% to be multiplied by shock effect. However, an elementalist would still need 233% increased effective shock in order to guarantee maxing out that shock. That is a lot. Lastly, you can get shock a few other ways, such as Shocked Ground or Vessel of Vinctar. Shocked Ground grants a fixed 20% shock, and all other sources of non-hit shock are 20% that does scale with shock effect. Hopefully shock now makes a little more sense to you than before. If you have any additional questions or want me to cover other topics, please feel free to leave them in the comments or come by my Twitch at twitch.tv/DonTheCrown. Thank you very much.